my honor and privilege, delight to introduce our first speakers, who are the contingent from Sportula Europe. So a few notes about the speakers who are about to talk, where they will be discussing more about the work of Sportula itself within the presentation. So let me focus right now on who they are. So there are 5 members of the Sportula Europe board. Sam Agbamu is currently training to teach Latin and classics in secondary, middle, and high schools. In 2019, he was awarded a PhD in classics from King's College London for a thesis on Italian colonial receptions of Roman literary representations of Africa, which he's now turning into a book. Ashley Chibber is in his third year of writing a PhD thesis on communication failure and civil war in Latin epic. He is involved with EDI work for a number of organizations, including the Council of University Classical Departments. Hardeep Dinsa is a first-year PhD student looking at the history of white British identity and its relationship to classical reception in neoclassical art. On the side, he recolors whitewashed statues through illustration to disrupt the Western cultural history that produced these false realities. Bet Hux is a 4th-year PhD candidate at Heidelberg University, researching Egyptian influence on Imperial Roman art, architecture, and cultural identity, and is also an activist for disability accessibility. Madhura Umachandran is a Tamil scholar from London who writes about critical theory and critical race theory, sometimes in relation to the classical. Madhura contributed towards this paper, but wasn't available to present today. So lastly, if you're tweeting about this paper, please tag the organizational account at Sportula Europe rather than any personal accounts. So now I will pass it over to Sportula Europe. Last thing I'll say is that there are, as you know, several people who are about to speak, so you might wish now to put your Zoom functionality on speaker view so that you'll see everyone as they come up. All right, take it away.
Thank you, Joe and Hannah, for the introduction and for creating this wonderful space. We're delighted to be here. This paper is an introduction to the activities of Sportula Europe in the first year of our existence and to the values of mutual aid and solidarity which underpin our work. It will emphasize our continuity and similarities with other microgrant organizations and the way that our model differs from some of these groups, particularly in its long-term outlook. Our work focuses on the networks and material circumstances required to make teaching and learning possible across institutions and disciplines, practices which help people from historically looted and marginalized communities to survive and thrive in a field which is often exclusionary and in institutions of higher education which were usually designed for white, middle-class, able-bodied, cisgender heterosexual men. We hope that attendees of this conference will already be familiar with the phenomenal work of the Sportula, a microgrant initiative launched in early 2018 by a group of graduate students and ECRs based predominantly in the United States. Our 5-person collective came together after the Sportula issued a call to set up a European version of their initiative. And although we are fully independent from the Sportula, we owe our existence to them. As well as offering practical advice, they have shown that a microgrant and solidarity initiative in classics can be successful without compromising on its key values. We have imitated their structure of maintaining a BIPOC-only leadership group, which influences our politics and practices, but does not restrict who can receive microgrants. Like the Sportula, we do not require micrograntees to justify their need. We do not have a formal application or selection process, and we aim to fulfill requests quickly within 2 weeks, if at all possible. We also use the Sportula's model of sharing micrograntees' anonymized stories on social media with their permission to attract the regular and one-off donations that enable our microgrant scheme. Sharing stories in this way can demonstrate the range of financial difficulties faced by students and scholars in the field and stimulate conversations and awareness rather than keeping these issues secret and hidden. Financial need should not be seen as a cause for shame. We see an urgent need for our group to be particularly vocal about the issues of race and ethnicity in ancient world studies, for instance, through our use of social media and through the bibliography you can find on our WordPress site, because these issues have received comparatively little attention in the UK and Europe. In contrast, there are already organizations dedicated to introducing classical subjects to students from poor or working class backgrounds, so we can afford to be less vocal about social class, except as it relates to specific material circumstances. We make a point of hosting our website in a range of different languages, expanding beyond the exclusionary dominance of specific so-called scholarly languages to emphasize our international outlook. Our microgrants are open to students and early career researchers from across Europe, although so far around 80% of our grantees seem to be based in the UK and have requested their grant in pound sterling. 4 members of our group were raised in and studied for their undergraduate degrees in Britain, so both our reach and our analyses tend to be heavily weighted towards the UK. Expanding our networks and reach is a priority for the next year. Sportula Europe's focus on race is due to the relative absence of collective voices on this issue in the areas we cover. The UK only has 1 Black woman professor of classics and only about a dozen other classists of colour in permanent academic posts, who are usually the only BIPOC members of academic staff in their departments. Such individuals are frequently vocal on issues of race, equality, and diversity, but there are no organizations like the ones that Joe mentioned earlier, like MREC, the Mountaintop Coalition, AAACC, and no concept of the Historically Black College or University, HBCU. The UK's first Black Studies undergraduate program was created less than 5 years ago, and there is a widespread reluctance across Europe to discuss the societal impacts of race and racism. As Joe mentioned, there are also undergrad-led student groups for classes of colour based in Oxford, Cambridge, and London, and we deeply appreciate and applaud their work. But we have tried to take on more responsibility for creating a cross-institutional network which can push for change in the field without having to worry about how our activism might impact our degree transcripts or how our lecturers, examiners, or colleagues might see us. In much of continental Europe, university tuition fees are low. Living costs may also be low for students who live with family and attend local institutions. In the UK, it's a slightly different situation. Undergraduate tuition fees were introduced across the UK in 1998 at £1,000 per year. By 2006, they had trebled, and by 2012, they had trebled again. They currently sit at £9,000 or higher, which is a very drastic change in a single generation. Student loans do not need to be co-signed by parents, and repayment plans are less onerous than in the USA. So if students are willing to be saddled with tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt and accept that this will be a constant but not debilitating burden throughout their working life, it is often possible to pursue an undergraduate degree without financial support from parents. However, university classics departments in the UK have not really reckoned with the question of whether or not the courses they offer are worth this level of debt. Many lecturers and professors in the UK graduated with little or no student debt and were able to move quickly into academic jobs. The situation for current undergraduates and postgraduates is very different. Attracting a more diverse student body exacerbates rather than solves this problem. And we have found that many of our microgrant requests come from master students and self-funded PhD students who have less access to these kinds of student loans. The higher education landscape has changed so much over the last 10 years that mutual aid in academia feels necessary in a way that it didn't in 2010, and coronavirus has only exacerbated that situation.